Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, finally getting back to my Valentine series and getting to showcase some brand new stamps and dies from Pretty Pink Posh. This is actually part of a blog hop, so make sure you check out my blog post, which will be linked directly below the video because there's tons of amazing inspiration using so many of the new goodies. I'm only using a couple here, and I started off with some BRISTOL smooth cardstock. And I was stamping the little images from the Cupid Friends. This is like a little mini stamp set. So I stamped the images with versamark ink, and then I heat embossed them with Hero Art's white embossing powder. So of course on camera it's a little difficult to see because it's white on white. And then even my watercoloring is very pale. I don't know, in my head I was thinking about just keeping them kind of light and ethereal, you know, they're little cupids. I don't know. I decided to use Distress Oxides to watercolor them in because I'm obsessed with the Distress Oxides in every way, shape, and form. And they lend themselves for really easy watercoloring. You could use regular Distress inks or certain dye inks will work. Traditional watercolors, clean color, real brush markers, you know, whatever floats your boat. With these, I used them the other day and I was like, I wanted to use them again. So this was just very quick and simple. I only ended up using 5 different colors altogether for this entire card. And with the oxides, and this works with the regular Distress inks as well, I just smush the lid of the ink pad into the ink pad, and then it picks up a bit of ink on the lid. And then I can pick that up with either a water brush or a paintbrush. And then I just leave it there. So the next time I go to use this, when I pull the lid off, if there's ink pooled up on the lid, I can just, again, pick that up with my water brush. With these, I didn't need very much, obviously, because they're just little tiny images and I'm doing little tiny areas. But once everything was dry, which again, didn't take very long because I wasn't adding a whole lot, I used the coordinating die set to die cut out the little characters. And then I added, I used my black glaze pen to add little dots to their eyes, because that's the one thing when you white on white heat emboss with little like people images and critters and that sort of thing, you just lose the detail on their faces. And depending on the image, sometimes I will also use the black glaze pen on the faces, you know, to outline a nose or mouth, etc. But with these, I just wanted to add that little bit to the eyes just so they didn't look so weird, if that makes sense. So set that aside to let that little bit of black glaze dry. And then on the remaining piece of cardstock, I used the new Love Shaker wafer die from Pretty Pink Posh. And I just used the scrap piece to kind of hold it in place so I could do a bunch of sponging using that Candied Apple Distress ink, or Distress Oxide ink. I love. This is just one of my favorites. I don't know. There's just something about this color, and using oxides, they're just so creamy is the description I always want to think of. So I then pulled out scrap paper and sponged it some more because I wanted to make sure to get the edges. And on the die cut, I was using a little post-it note because you can see fingerprints. It's the same with the Distress inks. And then I just took a scrap and sponged on some of that same worn lipstick ink that I'd used for the watercoloring. Just lightly because I want it to go in the background of all of this. And then I just took the spray nozzle right out of my spray bottle and I was flicking that against my fingers to flick a bunch of water onto this. So I got that fun distress water look. Let everything dry. And then I took another piece of white cardstock and I die cut that Love Shaker from it so I can inlay that Love Shaker piece. So now I have a piece of clear acetate, and I'm going to just trim that down so it's slightly smaller than that piece of white cardstock. And then to adhere the acetate, I'm just using my little Xyron tape runner. And I started applying the adhesive, and then I realized if I put that inlay back into this piece here, I can then apply the Xyron tape runner onto both at the same time because it's such a narrow die cut. And in my head, I was like, oh, I'm going to have to get out my multimedia mat and play. I don't like using liquid adhesives over acetate. I end up getting it everywhere. No matter what I do, I smear it onto the acetate. It's a pain. I prefer using a dry adhesive like a tape runner or score tape, etc. So this worked perfectly. I wish I would think of things like this more often and just, you know, those little brilliant bursts of inspiration. So this way I was able to have adhesive on both. I didn't worry that there was no adhesive on the back of the actual word part of it. That's fine. As long as it was around the perimeter so that love die cut is adhered into place. I've got my acetate on the back. And now I'm going to add my foam tape. So I only did 2 layers of foam. If you really want your elements to really shake and move around freely, do 3 layers, but I rarely do more than 2 just because I find that that's just fine for me. I don't mind if things get a little bit stuck sometimes because I do tend to be heavy-handed with the sequins and whatnot. But I did 2 layers and I doubled them up before even applying this to the back of the card front here. Just saves a ton of time and effort. And then trimming it off with scissors. So I'm going around the entire perimeter with foam tape. And then I'm going around the outside of this love shaker piece because there's no need for it to add so many sequins that it goes, shakes across the whole back, because you're only going to see where the window is. So I would either have to add tons, and I want it to be, the sequins to show through without falling to the bottom and you not being able to see them without, shaking it. So that's why I added the pieces right around the perimeter of that heart. So now when I go in to add my confetti mix, this is the new iridescent like heart-shaped confetti, and like I said, I was heavy-handed with it. Like, I packed them in there. It's actually hard for some of them to shake around because there's so much, but they're so pretty. So it was just fun. So I loaded that up in there, and then I had to trim down this piece that I had sponged with the worn lipstick ink so that it'll fit behind here, and just made sure to line it up so it covers the complete back of this to seal in all of that confetti. This also just makes it so much easier to adhere this to my card base rather than trying to like line things up or whatever. So now I've got my fun little shaker, and I had to play with it for a minute or two before finishing the card. So I have this is Poppy cardstock from MFT, and this shade of red actually goes really well with the Distress Oxide in Candied Apple. So I cut that down to 4 1/4 by 11 inches and scored it at 5 1/2. So this will be a top folding A2 size card. Then I used my anti-static powder tool again on the inside of the card so I could stamp the Happy Valentine's Day sentiment. This is also in that little Cupid Friends stamp set. So I inked that up with the Versamark ink, stamped that into my card, and then I'm going to heat emboss it with the same white embossing powder. Honestly, my original idea was to do my card base in white because that's just habit. But then I was like, oh, I'll have to get out black ink, and this whole card is very light and very bright, and there's, other than the little tiny dots on their eyes, there's any black. So I was like, I think I'll just do a different color. So that's why I chose the red cardstock. Saved me from having to get my black ink out, and it just it also gave it that extra little pop of color, which made me happy. So I stamped the solid hearts from the set with that worn lipstick ink around the sentiment. And then I just added a bit more of the Xyron tape runner to the back of this cardstock here. It was kind of redundant because once this foam tape is pressed into place, it's not going anywhere. But did that anyway. Press this onto my card front, and then I decided to adhere the little Cupid images with some foam tape as well, just to pop them up for that little bit of extra dimension. So once I had those in place, I took the little tiny hearts that I had colored and die cut, and I didn't realize I was off camera, but I just used my little Xyron tape runner to add adhesive to those as well, because it comes out in little tiny dots, so it just works for even tiny little images like this. And then I'm going to press those into place, and that's going to finish off my card. So as always, there'll be a link below the video to my blog post. There's going to be links to all the supplies used. And like I said, this is part of a blog hop, so definitely check out the other designers, and there's giveaways and all kinds of fun things. So check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye!